My journey and even my life almost came to an end. I won't be doing that again. This is the sixth and final episode of my 6 months in Japan video, and in this episode I was really surprised to see the rise of temperature going up to as high as 35 centigrade. It was bloody hot. There was a heat wave trapping air in and around Japan, and Tokyo was getting absolutely smashed, and even Hokkaido, where I now reside, was also getting smashed, which is not usual for summer in Hokkaido. It's not usual at all. Hokkaido is actually known for its cooler summers, but this summer was bloody melting. And interestingly enough, even some days the temperature in Hokkaido was actually hotter than it was in Honshu on the mainland. Having moved from Australia with the expectation of cooler summers, boy was I in for a shock. This summer has probably been one of the worst summers I've ever endured. Before God had actually turned up the thermostat, I was enjoying my electric assist bike, and on one particular day I decided to go for a trip to a town that I'd never been to before. I was curious and I really needed to get up off my fat ass. I filled up my backpack with water, a Bluetooth speaker, and I was playing some Rammstein to get motivated, and so I plotted my journey to this town and I set out. In order to get to my destination I would actually pass some familiar spots, but in this case I thought I would try and take a bit of a different route. I ended up going on one of the paths and I actually came to a dead end. I turned around and the scenery where I was really awesome. There was lots of green grass, there was trees, some of the green grass had little hills on it, and so because I'd gone to a dead end I needed to reroute myself so I could get to the town that I wanted to go to. The only problem was I had to go down what I thought was a small hill that was on a plot of grass, which would then go past the sewage works to get onto the path to go to the town. Once I'd looked at Google Maps and I worked it out, I decided that was the right route to take. And so, being the stupid dick that I am, I decided to start cycling, and I was going down the hill and I completely misjudged it. I thought it was going to be a mini little hill. Like hell was it. Now, one of the aspects with assisted bikes is they are heavier than your standard bike, and I went arse over tit. I ended up going straight over my handlebars, and in that moment it did happen, as cliche as it sounds, it did happen really fast. In that moment I smashed the ground, and for about 15 seconds I could not take a full breath. I literally thought my lungs had collapsed and I was breathing in. I was trying to breathe in. Gradually, bit by bit, I was actually able to start breathing, and I had to try and pick myself up. I quickly called my mother-in-law's boyfriend, but he wasn't able to come at that time because he was out of range, and so I had to pick myself up. At this point, everything in my backpack was spilled everywhere. I lifted up my shirt and I could see that I'd actually done myself in so much that I'd actually got blood underneath my skin, and my left hand was hurting as well. I needed to get up. I knew I needed to go to a hospital to get checked just in case I had something serious going on. The problem was my bike's wheel had actually turned about 70 degrees that way. So trying to push my bike and then actually cycle my bike to the hospital, I had to adjust the handlebars to account for the tyre actually being completely wonky donkey. I managed to get to the hospital. As soon as I went into the hospital, I lifted up my top to emphasize what had happened. They'd seen my helmet. Now, I should also mention that the key to the lock on my bike had completely snapped off. It was just really wasn't good. Fortunately, they took me straight into the waiting room. There was no one else there. Within about 5 minutes, they had me into the back room. I was lying down on a bed, and straight away I asked for a cold compression to stick on my hand because that was hurting the most. Now, by this point, my mother-in-law's boyfriend had actually called my mother-in-law, and my mother-in-law was on her way. It took about 10 to 15, maybe 20 minutes for the doctor to come and see me, but once they did, they asked me where my pain was, and I said that I had pain around my chest area, and quite obviously I had quite a bit of pain around the solar plexus or midsection, and most of my pain was actually coming from my hand. Now, they wanted to make sure that nothing internal was going on, so they gave me an ultrasound, and interestingly enough, I'd actually fractured some of my ribs, or at least one of my ribs. I thought that was it. They said, you don't really need anything, you can go now, you're fine, just make sure that you get your wife to check on you tonight just to make sure that, you know, there's nothing serious going on. We'll give you some medication. I didn't really take much of the medication. I think it was just paracetamol that they gave me, so it was, you know, it's neither here nor there. So I went home, but the next couple of days I had to go and get some x-rays done. So I went and got some x-rays done on my hand, and I ended up getting some x-rays done on my ribs as well. One of the doctors I went to was really not friendly at all, and I think he gave me a bit of false information. I went to another doctor's, and they'd actually told me that I'd in fact chipped one of the bones in my middle finger, and they confirmed that I had actually fractured one of my ribs. So I had to have a splint around my fingers, and I also had to eventually wear like a compression thing around my chest to help support myself for the pain, basically. I'm actually making this video in November, and I've been through all my doctor's procedures. My splint is gone, my ribs are pretty good, however my left hand is still not 100%. If I tried to do knuckle push-ups, it would actually hurt my knuckles. I'm not too sure how long until I'll be able to hit a boxing bag. I like doing some sparring on a boxing bag, and that's something that I might not be able to do for a while, unfortunately. The moral of all that is I'm not going to be such a daft twat and try and go down hills like that again. It does actually give me a bit of the heebie-jeebies when I think about it. When I think about going down the hill again, it's like some post-traumatic stress. It's just not fun. But funnily enough, I think the main thing that was pissing me off about this whole experience was that I was absolutely sweating my balls off during this period because the temperature was mental, and because I was wearing a splint and it was really itchy, I couldn't scratch it too well, and the weather was so hot that I was just sweating so much. I couldn't go for walks because if I went for a walk I'd start sweating too much and then it'd just start getting itchy again, so I couldn't keep up my fitness, so I'd actually gone back. I receded back to where I was in the beginning again, which sucked. So about 2 weeks afterwards, even though I had a splint on my hand, my wife and I ended up going to Lake Akan, which was quite an impromptu trip actually. Normally we plan ahead, but in this case I think it must have been a Thursday and we said, yeah, let's go on a mini holiday, and we went to Lake Akan. Right next to the lake is the Ainu village. The Ainu are the indigenous people of Hokkaido in Japan. I always thought that indigenous was more specific, or at least the word was specific to the First Peoples of Australia, but it can mean a collective of First Peoples in the world, so to speak. With regards to the Ainu, whilst I've never been to America, I feel like I can see some similarities between the Native Americans and the Ainu, just in terms of their connection to the land and their style, their art style, and their structures and architecture, which is really cool. Unfortunately, the Ainu share similar struggles to other First Peoples of the world in terms of acceptance. That's something I will eventually make a video on. It's a bit of a dodgy topic because it's one of those controversial things, especially when I'm not an expert on those things, but it is something I would like to learn and make a video about. After our visit to the Ainu village in Lake Akan, the heat was really starting to ramp up. My wife was lucky because she was in work in the air conditioning, and everybody else was lucky in the household because they were also working in the air conditioning. However, myself and poor little fluff bum Nyan were absolutely boiling, and Nyan was so hot that she was rolling on her back, kawaii so, the poor thing. After staying in my mother-in-law's house for 4 months, it was now time to fly the coop, and both my wife and I decided to move to the bigger city about 20 minutes away in Obihiro. You might be thinking, why would you do that? Well, unfortunately, it was a massive debacle trying to get an internet connection in my mother-in-law's house. I'd even gone to the point of asking Aki to help me. Aki then asked the mayor to help me, and the mayor ended up asking one of the telecommunications providers, NTT, and basically the only thing they said was impossible. And I was pretty gutted. I can't go into more details than that because it's a bit too specific about the location where my mother-in-law lives, but yeah, I was pretty gutted, but that's the reason why my wife and I needed to move out. Also, I wanted to be closer to the action. In Ikeda, the town that we were living in, it's such a gorgeous village, but it is such a sleepy town. If you were raising children, or maybe if you were retired and you really wanted a peaceful, quiet life, it would be awesome, but for me it was quite a bit of a snooze snooze fest. I'm happy now because now that I'm living in the city, any night that I want, I can go and play pool. There's bars and pubs that are open until 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning, and that's on a weekday. I don't go to those in the morning, but it's nice to know that I have the option to if I wanted to. My wife and I have also really started getting into doing some karaoke, and karaoke is surprisingly awesome because you can actually pay for all you can drink at the same time as doing karaoke. So you could have 5 hours of all you can drink while singing karaoke, just start belting out songs. My wife gets a bit embarrassed because, being me, I end up making stupid noises and people in the next booth can probably hear them, but oh well. A week after moving into the house, things had already started picking up. We went back to my mother-in-law's house 1 week later to meet one of my mother-in-law's friends. I met the friend and I also met her son, who is around the same age as me. His name's Rio. He and I hit it off so much that I actually wanted to go out and have a drink with him one of the nights before he went back to Wakanai, which is the northernmost point in Hokkaido. His mother lived in the area, but he was teaching. He's a teacher up in Wakanai. So I asked him if he wanted to come out and do a nomi hodai with me, all you can drink. And he said he'd have to get back to me. Now, around about this time was the Obon ceremony. The Obon ceremony is a summer ceremony where Japanese people will actually visit the graves of the deceased and clean the graves and prune any of the foliage and put fresh flowers down. He said he was not able to come out on one of the days, which I was a bit sad, but I understood. But he told me one of the nights he was actually going to a jazz bar in Obihiro called B Flat Major 7. What an awesome name. On the night, I wasn't feeling too well and I was actually very close to cancelling, but I'm so glad that I went because it was such an awesome night. I walked in and I met Rio and his father. His father had even bought us a bottle of Jack Daniels to share between us. I even offered to pay some money, but his father refused, and once again, Japanese hospitality strikes again. It was really awesome and I felt so spoiled. As the night went on, Rio even got up and started playing the drums. He was literally the best drummer in there. I was surprised how well he played. It was all impromptu as well. Everybody was playing a bit of their own piece and being like jazz. Everybody else was just filling in. It was awesome. It was my first experience of a jazz bar. I definitely would like to go again. After the Obon ceremony, later that night, they actually had hanami. They also had fireworks. And I was surprised, considering Ikeda's a small town, I was actually surprised by how good the actual performance was. Especially considering the fireworks that I used to see in Caerphilly Castle back in Wales, my hometown. A whole bloody castle with fireworks. Ikeda, in fairness, it did hold his own, I have to say. So by this point, I was living in a bigger city. I finally managed to land a job online teaching English and things were starting to fall in place. I've lived more life in the past 6 months than I have for many years. In Australia, I often spent most of my time sat on my fat ass playing computer games or just not really living to my potential. And so it's been really awesome. And for that, I'm really grateful. Even now in autumn, the colours are absolutely magnificent and I absolutely love it. Something that I missed from when I used to live in Wales was the change of seasons. Living in the Sunshine Coast, Australia, you just don't get the seasons. It's just endless summer. Further to this, I finally decided to start making and posting these videos, which I'm really glad I've done because I have had decent reception. Don't get me wrong, you know, you do have a tiny bit of bad reception, but from what I've had so far, I've been really happy. I hope to be able to grow this channel and reach more of you guys, which leads me to the last part. Thank you for following me on this journey through these 6 videos. I am looking forward to posting more videos, and if you'd like to follow me, please subscribe for future videos. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.